start by introducing our guests. So immediately to my right here, Dr. Rosa Canet-Avilés. She is the Chief Science Officer at California Institute for Regenerative Medicine, CIRM, ensuring the cohesive alignment of CIRM's strategic objectives and providing high-level management and leadership to guide the integration of the discovery, preclinical development, clinical development, patient outreach and access, and infrastructure programs. It's a big job. Prior to this role, Rosa served as the Vice President of Scientific Programs and Education, where she led a team dedicated to identifying the most promising early-stage research in stem cells and regenerative medicine, while also overseeing CIRM's education program aimed at fostering the next generation of scientists. With 2 decades of experience, Rosa has held leadership roles across biopharma, government, and nonprofit sectors. Rosa holds a PhD in neuroscience from the School of Medicine at Leeds University in the UK, and the BS in organic chemistry from the Central University of Barcelona. Let's welcome Rosa. And next to Rosa, our second guest is Michelle Schroeder, who is the Vice President of R&D Strategy and Operations at Amgen, and also a member of KGI's Board of Trustees. At Amgen, she leads portfolio strategy and execution, business operations, lab operations, performance excellence, knowledge and learning, and talent and culture across the R&D operation. Another big job. With more than 25 years of experience in science and research, Michelle has focused her career on areas such as strategy development, scientific operations, commercialization acceleration, process transformation, digital innovation, and talent development. Prior to Amgen, Michelle was an emergency medical technician, research scientist, and clinical research associate at UC Davis Medical Center, and has built and managed multiple contract research labs. Michelle has a bachelor's in biology and psychology and an MBA with emphasis in finance and technology management. Welcome, Michelle. And our third guest today is Dr. David Morris, who serves as the Vice Chancellor for Business Development, Innovation, and Partnerships at the University of California, San Francisco. At UCSF, Dave oversees Innovation Ventures, a unit dedicated to advancing research discoveries into clinical applications. David collaborates with researchers, industry partners, and investors to facilitate the development and commercialization of new therapies and technologies, aiming to expedite their delivery to patients. Dave has extensive experience in pharmaceutical research and development, venture capital, and the establishment of early-stage biotech companies, and he previously worked in industry at Roche and Novartis. After completing his internal medicine training at Massachusetts General Hospital, Dave pursued a fellowship in pulmonary and critical care medicine at UCSF and joined the UCSF faculty in 2001, where he conducted NIH-funded research on interstitial lung diseases and the regulation of TGF-beta signaling. Another very big job. Welcome, Dave. So as I said, the primary goal of today's panel is to hear from our guests about their career journeys. So what we thought we would do is we would give each of them a few minutes to kick things off, and they're going to share with us their career journey, highlighting the path they took, any unique or special circumstances they had to manage, and perhaps share with us what the future looks like for them. So let's get started. Rosa, do you want to hit it off?
Happy to hit it off. Can you hear me well?
Yes.
Yeah. So I'm really honored to be here. Thank you, Dr. Abousalem, and also with these distinguished colleagues as well. So the path I took, I grew up in the north of Spain, in a village between France and Spain called Castilla-Empúries. And I was a very curious child, and I also wanted to help others, especially health care related matters. That was driving me towards medicine. At the time I didn't have the possibility, for different reasons, mostly financial, to do medicine. So I decided to focus on a 5-year degree, and that was the basis of biology and biochemical reaction. So I decided to do chemistry because I thought if I didn't get a job in biology, I would be able to work in industry as well. So always with a practical edge as well. And that led me to the UK. After I finished my undergrad, I had the possibility to do a PhD in neuroscience, and I decided to focus on neurodegenerative disorders and specifically in Alzheimer's disease. And the reason I went to Alzheimer's was because I have a passion for it and neurodegenerative diseases, but also because it was where the funding was. Well, I mean, you've got to be practical, right? That after that, I went into my postdoc years, and I was very fortunate to get positions here in the United States. I was at Mayo Clinic, and then I switched into expanding my expertise into Parkinson's disease as well, and I moved to the NIH, and through those academic years I gathered a lot of discovery experience, but then I went into industry, and I was very fortunate to have a couple of stints. The main one was at Amgen, and actually I didn't know I could have Michelle with me, but thank you. And I'll link to Amgen in a minute, because it was crucial in one of the challenges. Amgen was particularly very supportive to me. That was not a pitch for Amgen, it just happened to be. All of these years, I then slowly transitioned from discovery research in the lab into science management, and more towards implementing, joining people of different types of expertises into to advance the science. So it was more program management, partnership development. I was involved with the Foundation for the NIH for 7 years, developing public-private partnerships, and then more strategic. And that led me to the job that I have now at CERN. Dr. Maria Millan, who is in the public, is in the board of KGI. She was at the time the president and CEO at CERN, and she actually called me one day and said, could you like to come and lead our discovery programs? And she was a mentor to me. She helped me develop many skills to not only develop those discovery programs, but also implement a new strategy and help move CERN forward into what we are now. I've been leading the strategic allocation framework, and as a chief science officer, I'm overseeing all of the programs to advance not only regenerative medicine, discovery up to clinical infrastructure, but also accessibility and education. We have programs that we provide. Now, challenges. How many minutes do I have? Because I counted myself and now I'm getting longer. But the challenges, let me tell you 2 challenges. So there are, as a scientist, an international scientist all over the world, there are challenges and opportunities for all of us, right? But I think that in particular in the US, the main challenge is the visa, right? The visa status. It took me 12 years to get from coming to this country through visa, up to getting my citizenship. So it wasn't a slam dunk, and I needed to have a sponsor every part of the way. There was a moment where there was a mistake that was made, and I was actually at Amgen, and Amgen was super supportive. I had to leave the country, come back to get a stamp, but they did like some magic that helped me, and they were the ones that helped me get in the path towards my green card as well. So just to say that there are challenges, but the opportunities, I think there are opportunities because culturally, you bring a diverse perspective. That was what appealed to me to go to other countries. You have a diverse perspective, you are also getting different points of looking, different ways to look at things, and that makes it accelerates science and anything else as well. So yeah, did I leave anything?
This is great.
I think,
Thank
okay.
you. We would have questions for you, of course. But what I really enjoy, hearing, you're mentioning the curiosity and the passion, which I'm assuming these have been your drivers along the way.
Exactly, and I think when you have curiosity, if you think only in one way, sometimes you get stuck, but if you get other perspectives and diverse, ways of looking, and then we are actually implementing that at larger scale in programs at CERN as well, but we can talk later. Thank
Excellent.
you.
Thank you. Okay, let's go to Michelle.
Perfect. Again, thanks for having me. It's great to see you all. I have some friends in the audience. It's great to see you. Just a little bit about, I guess, my career journey starts with my why. So, why did I even go in this direction? And there's really two aspects of that. One is, I grew up, my mom got cancer, breast cancer, when she was 31. And through that journey of surgeries and spread and chemo, et cetera, that it did come back more aggressively time after time, we did learn that our family is a BRCA-positive family. And so on my maternal side, every single, from my grandmother, my aunt, every cousin I have is positive for a BRCA gene, except for me. I'm the only one that escaped that dominant misery. But again, it made me see how healthcare worked across different states, across different decades, in terms of from the way that we did surgery to the care that we provided to even understanding the mental health or the whole patient. And just watching the disparity and the changes over time did really motivate me. Alongside and I just took another Hogan test, but if you look at my behavioral, I love behavioral science, and if you can take a personality test and understand how to apply it and who you work with, it's actually fascinating. But I score really abnormally high on a few things. One is curiosity, creativity, science, and fun. And when you put those things together, this is what has driven me in everything that I do. And I like to disrupt. I actually really like to kind of find the ceiling and crack it, or find a wall and push it down. So I have fun with that. So what kind of drove me is service. I really want to see a day where chemo doesn't exist, that you can actually predict and prevent through AI-driven imaging and other aspects, or targeted therapeutics, that you don't actually have this poison. Right now it's amazing, take it if you need it. But I dream of that day, and I think disruption is needed to get there. So, I started on a journey, I think like many others that are pre-med. So I did all the things. And I actually had a family tragedy that brought me home for a couple years to take care of my parents. We lost my brother, and in that time, it was right when I'd gotten into med school, and I took a year just to say, I'm gonna go to a CRO and just practice my surgical skills. So I was a research surgeon in San Diego for a few years, just kind of figuring out when I was gonna go back or what I wanted to do. And I started to just get obsessed with efficiency. I'm also really impatient, as well. So I was turning over the OR, I was automating things, I started to manage the site. I started to move up from an associate to how can I really make this hum? How can I make it work better? How can I start managing people and developing people? It just started that journey for me, and I ended up staying in it. So I ended up moving from that to Amgen, and I've been at Amgen for a long time. I call myself a dinosaur, but really a velociraptor still. And the reason I've been at Amgen so long, is because from the time I was hired, and I was hired to do a job that hadn't existed, I created my jobs from scratch, meaning everything that I did from the time that I started in 2002 had never existed at Amgen. My job, the group, the roles, and I had the really amazing experience, working with fantastic leaders that gave me that autonomy, and I built the trust over time, to be able to say, we've got to stay ahead of the curve here. And I guess that's one piece of advice I continue to give people is, you don't know what job is going to exist when you're ready to get into the industry, right? And if it doesn't exist, maybe you should be making it, but think about that. But I spent quite a bit of time in clinical immunology, immunogenicity, and really kind of learned from bench to bedside through that, which was fantastic, and then really drove into strategic ops. So started to manage the operations, scientific operations, from clinical immunology to creating a translational sciences unit. Again, bench to bedside is a place that I really enjoy, that bridge. And being a kind of a translator from science to business to compliance to tech, right? Just really kind of being an integrator and working above function. So that's kind of where I made my mark at Amgen, is kind of working for patients and no one else. And I've told bosses that, I don't work for you, I work for patients. And they just laugh and they're like, yes, Michelle, we know. But again, it's been a really fun opportunity to build an organization that can creatively solve big problems. And that's what's kept me going and there for quite a bit of time. So I currently manage all of R&D, which is research, development, regulatory, safety, a bit of commercial, and recently with what we call Atmos, it's a combination of our kind of AI and medical, which has been fantastic. So really driving into tech, and I think we'll talk more about that in a little bit. And I look forward to, giving you a little bit of understanding of where we're going with that. But it's been it's a creative, fun journey for me. Where I'm going next, where I want to go, or what I want to do when I grow up, I'm actually still not sure. It's such what a fun time to be in biotech, or to be in this time of bridging technology with science. It's like it's like the next gen, the next revolution that you're just coming into, the use of AI and multi-specifics and so much technology that was just unimaginable, 5 or 10 years ago. It's keeping me really excited to be here and think about how we can transform healthcare. And I feel like I can be empowered to do that where I am, but where I want to go next is most likely global health, access health, women's health. So I'm looking at, how can I apply what I'm doing philanthropy-wise right now, but that's where I see my journey going, whether it's in Amgen or elsewhere at some point.
Thank you, Michelle. I really find it very interesting that your entry into the field was driven by your personal experience and your family experience. But what I like more fascinating in the way you're talking is your self-awareness of what interests you, what you like to do, how you like to do it, and I think that in itself is a great tip for someone who wants to continue growing in their leadership. Fantastic, thank you. Okay, Dave, share with us, please.
Really interesting. Thanks for having me, and great to be here. And thank you for your stories, which were really inspiring. Caused me to reflect a little bit on, what got me started. So I was thinking, how did I end up being a doctor? I think I decided at a very early age to be a physician, and I realized it was two things. It was my grandparents, actually. I grew up in a very small town in upstate New York, where everybody basically went into the gun industry. It's a small town in upstate New York, which is famous for the Remington rifles, Illinois, New York, if any of you are hunters. And my grandfather was a toolmaker. All of my cousins and aunts and uncles, had something to do with the arms. But I got fascinated with medicine, so I was a little bit of an odd guy out. And I realized that, my grandmother came to live with me at an early age, probably about 6, just after my grandfather had died from prostate cancer. And she was a diabetic. And we ended up injecting her with insulin, which I, now realize was just really coming into broad use at that time. And I was fascinated by this activity of this mysterious substance being injected into my grandmother's leg, and I just couldn't, I was one of those kids who never really was bothered by the sight of blood. I just found the whole thing fascinating. And it intrigued me. How does this thing work, and where did it come from? And that fascination captured me at 6 and never left. And honestly, what I would say, if there's one sort of unifying theme of my very bizarre career trajectory, it is that I've tried to follow that mystery all the way through my career. I've done a lot of different things. I have a very strange career arc. I think it was Jay Bradner who said that to me when I met him first at Novartis before I was at Amgen, where I've gone from being the plan of being a small town surgeon to being going to NIH, getting seduced by molecular biology and learning about cancer biology, to having my family say, are you going to be that kind of doctor who says I need a doctor when my kid is sick? And I said, no, I'm going to be the kind of doctor who figures out why my kid is sick. And then, following that through becoming a research physician scientist, pulmonary and critical care, because I was fascinated by how any of these life supports work, to getting into immunology, drug discovery, etc. My undergraduate degree was in neuroscience with a minor in philosophy, actually, because I was interested in artificial intelligence in the days before it was hot. And then I find myself coming back full cycle to recently working in an AI-enabled drug discovery company called Valo Health, based in Boston. So what I would say for all of you is, it's very difficult to chart out, like many said here, what your career is going to be right now. And in many ways, it's going to be dictated by the currents of the time. But if you stay curious about those things that fascinate you, that are the deepest mysteries that you're interested in, the currents are going to carry you to some amazing things, whether it's cell therapies, gene therapies, novel biologics, new approaches to diseases that we haven't even figured out yet. We didn't even know what COVID was, and then we had used novel RNA technology to deliver a vaccine that no one had ever done before. These are the things that make this field so incredibly amazing. So I would just say, stay open. And in my leadership journey, it's really been about leaning into those things that are most mysterious to me. I remember when I was a pulmonary fellow, I said, I don't really understand blood gases very well. I don't understand all of these nuances, so I'm going to volunteer to teach it. And I ended up giving a lecture to the fellows, and then pretty soon I was giving a lecture to all the residents, and then pretty soon, I was like, I kind of understand this. So that's been my way. It's like, I don't understand something, so I'm going to learn it well enough that I can teach it. I'm not going to claim that I can teach AI at all, but it's turning out that even my experience in that has helped immensely as I've come into this new role as Vice Chancellor in Innovation Ventures. I didn't understand VC, so I went into the venture arm of Novartis to try that, because I said I want to learn about blackjack from the dealer side before I got into the biotech world and get slammed by the VCs. And that's really been the fundamental theme of what is your biggest mystery? How can you lean into that? How can you learn as much about it that you can teach it, and then deploy that as the world evolves around you? And that's what I would say has been both my biggest challenge and my biggest satisfaction.
Very nice, Dave. It's really interesting to find that the word curiosity appeared in the three journeys, which is great. And the fact that you also really followed that curiosity and at some point, or many points perhaps, took you out of your comfort zone or the natural path, but you just pursued it and went after it.
100%. I think Sri Ramaradaya, who's now the head of development at Novartis, a very close friend, talks about a matrix of career versus a ladder of a career. And I think that's a brilliant analogy. It's like, don't be afraid to go sideways or even step back a little bit to learn. Because what you'll find is that that power, that thrust, that energy that you get will take you further than this kind of sequential ladder-based approach. I think it's a great way to think about career development.
Thank you for that. So we're gonna go over some questions that you all provided in the registration process, and I think that the most immediate natural question out of hearing about your journeys is to get to know from each of you about what specifically motivates you to keep growing as a leader. And we can start with Rosa.
What really motivates me, and Dave, you said just something about going with the, you dictating by the currents of the time. And right now, what motivates me is also dictated by the currents of the time. So there are two or three main things. One is accelerating science and jumping on the wagon of innovation. The second is making the therapies that we get with this acceleration of science available and affordable, right? But the accessibility of these therapies is extremely important. And the third one is mentoring the next generation. You know, like right now, I am in the field of regenerative medicine, and I think mentoring and enabling the next generation of leaders in that field that will enable all this to happen is extremely important. And even more, those who are underserved and underrepresented that bring these diverse perspectives is very important to tap into this. And the current of times is bringing some challenges there. So we have to be smart, and I think what motivates me is figuring out how to smart the system to keep providing those opportunities and get this done. So
I like what you're saying, and if we look at your title as the Chief Science Officer, from the three things you mentioned, it's clearly that science cannot just exist by itself. You have the science piece, you have the business piece of how to make, you know, the product of the work you're doing accessible, but then you also have the leadership piece in developing the leaders of tomorrow, which is great. And just a plug for KGI, we have a program, at least one program, the MBS program or the MDM program as well, that combine the business with the science, because you cannot just be a pure scientist. You need the elements that make it a complete offering to society. Thank you for that. Michelle, what motivates you?
I'm saying that is why KGI does so well in industry, because they come in with some of that. So shout out to that. So, you know, I think I've got a similar theme, but what really keeps me motivated in leadership and to continue to evolve, one is just impact, right? Because to be able to catalyze, not just you as an individual, but catalyze a village of people, a tribe, if you say, to go solve big issues, bringing a diverse set of thinking, and motivating and allowing the space and the freedom for people to think creatively and solve that problem in a safe space is what really drives me. I'll put a point on that. You know, when COVID hit, and you know, being a very regulated industry where we cannot donate to health, you know, there's a lot of regulation to make sure fair market value, no kickbacks, everything like that. But when COVID hit, we're getting the calls of you know, physicians without PPE crying, or the testing had ground to a halt in Ventura County. We brought together a group of people, and in 4 days we had to break every process. We had to break everything to make a compliant, auditable process to be able to donate PPE across the world to people who needed it, you know, hospitals and sites, as well as donate things like testing equipment to Ventura, which, you know, improved our testing ability up to like 200% in 4 days. That's what leadership is to me, and it's the team that did it, but it's the ability to say, never waste a good crisis, let's go figure out how to make this happen. So that's one, and then second, and a really important association, that is just truly talent development. I'm maniacally focused on talent development. I love to put superhero powers together. Like, what's your superhero power? How do you align that with what the business needs, and just let that unicorn run? And it's what you're able to see from that is true innovation. So that's what motivates me on an everyday basis.
This is great. Dave?
Couldn't agree more. I think that the power of teams can't be overstated, and the power of diverse teams and broad thinking around a problem can't be overstated. I think that I'm inspired by the amazing creativity that you can see when you put a problem in front of the right people and let them go after it, empowering them. That's honestly what inspires me to be a leader. To kind of formulate the problem, bring together the team, and then watch the magic happen. I also do think that I'm intrinsically kind of a teacher by nature, and watching people grow in the role is amazing. So helping people realize their leadership potential and watching them grow as leaders is incredibly inspiring. And that was true whether you're training medical students, training residents, training people in industry, program leaders, executives. And I think that that power to inspire and that power to help people see farther than they might otherwise see is what keeps me going, for sure. And to this current of the times, that's another thing that's, amazing to me. I had the privilege of, now back at UCSF, of engaging with faculty members who were my heroes, actually, whether they're Nobel laureates or founders of cell therapy, and seeing sort of being able to, Isaac Newton thinks standing on the shoulders of giants. I think that also continues to inspire me to say, taking the leadership example of some of these incredible innovators and then trying to pass that on to the next generation and thinking, what are they going to do? How are we going to advance on cell therapies, whether it's designing novel gene circuits or putting small molecules together with biologics, or even, how AI will help us identify novel diseases and treatments. I think that keeps me going and saying, how can I be a part of that really exciting journey? And that keeps me hungry on that leadership journey.
Thank you, Dave. I like in these answers is that we had another question that is asking what defines great leadership in STEM fields, which I think, at least on one strong point, you answered that by saying, embracing the value of the diversity of thought, diversity of opinion, diversity of experiences, because only then, when you bring everybody to the table, that you get the best answer or the most robust solution to a problem.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I think, there used to be this joke that we had at the Novartis Venture Fund where we would allow 1 or 2 miracles with every company. And once you got to 3 miracles, you had to say, no, we got to walk away. But, it is this concept of it's always easy to get to know. When you're confronted with an idea, realize your natural instinct as a critical thinker in the STEM field is going to be, that won't work because. And you'll come up with 5 or 6 reasons it won't work. We can never put monoclonal antibodies in someone. We can never put a pig xenograft kidney into a human. We could never modify surface antigens such that there'd be a universal CAR T. What are you talking about? T cells. Engineered T cells to kill tumors? All that was impossible until it wasn't. And I think that my sort of lesson is I need to force myself to come to at least 3 ways to yes before I allow myself to get to no. And that is what I try to tell my teams too, that, okay, yeah, it's crazy, but what if? What do you need to believe to have this happen? And is there a way we can de-risk it? And that's, I think, to your point about leadership, it's inspiring that level, giving space for that creative thought.
Yeah, thank you. So the next question is really a good question for this panel, because you are working at the leading edge of technology and knowledge and science. So the question is, what role does innovation play in your leadership, or specifically in your strategic planning process? Rosa?
I feel I'm disadvantaging the other speakers because I have all the cool answers, right? So, or not. So I think innovation plays a very pervasive role throughout all what we do at CERN. In terms of the strategy, and as Dr. Mian also will attest to, we've been very innovative in the way we are thinking about the implementation of our strategy, and we actually designed a strategic allocation framework of prioritization that the board, Dr. Abousalem was part of the board that approved this strategy to implement, because we had to figure out how we were going to allocate the 4 billion. 4 billion can seem a lot of money, but when you have to develop therapies and make an impact that has an effect on most Californians, you've got to figure out, with the restrictions of cell and gene therapy, you have to figure out how are you going to do that, and not only with discovery, translation, clinical, and infrastructure, but also with providing opportunity for all and making these therapies accessible and affordable. That's a big task, and we implemented innovative thinking and implementation into that process. So that's in terms of a strategy. In terms of the programs themselves, I think that we have a lot of innovation as well. Some of the new things that we develop, and I don't know if you will comment on another question, but I would like, for discovery, up until a couple of years ago, discovery at CERN, we had done these foundational research programs that were like, they had a certain scope in terms of funding, but we realized that unless you bring different disciplines into the problem, right, you might not really be able to advance the needle. So what we decided is to have a large investment in this research using multidisciplinary approaches to accelerate research into diseases. And then we took a focus as well. We started with neuropsychiatric, neurodevelopmental disorders. We funded $10 million a grant, right? And we said, now collaborate. And we also told them, you've got to have at least a computational biologist, talk about AI, right? A clinician that can see where this is going to go applied, right? And the different disciplines in terms of research. So yeah, and we are applying for education as well. We are applying some innovative approaches. Traditionally, we had not been going to capture the underserved and underrepresented, and we designed some innovative approaches that could be able to capture those students that otherwise fall through the cracks of the system. So,
Thank you. Michelle?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's such an important question, and I do it. It's a terrible way of saying it, because there's a saying, right? Innovate or die. We need to continually transform ourselves, right? We need to stay ahead of those curves. So there's innovation at the bench, right? There's portfolio innovation, but there's also what I call innovation beyond the molecule. You can be innovating your processes. You can be removing complexity and white space. We know time is life. Getting some of these medicines into the hands of a patient that needs it, who's on hospice, that could potentially pull that patient off. We just got a phone call from a patient who was removed from hospice, because they had 4 months, maybe max into hospice. So when you start thinking about that, days matter, weeks matter, months matter, it actually matters. So, working at the speed of life, what does that mean? So you need to innovate both at the bench for the beautiful molecules that you're bringing through in a very long life cycle, industry with a very low success rate, right? Industry is about 5% success rate from bench to, getting it to the hands of a patient in a very long time. So how do you innovate to really kind of bring efficiency and speed in a compliant way? So, it's something I think that we apply all the time. You can apply it as an individual in whatever you're doing. And I think that proactive innovation of being able to look and continuously improve what you're doing and then start driving it from a leadership perspective, that is what's, that keeps you going, that keeps you relevant. And those that don't are the ones that get out-competed, both at an individual level as well as an industry or a company level. So I do think it is paramount to be able to invest in that from the individual to the top of the house.
Excellent.
Great points. I mean, I might go a little sideways on this and say, innovation is certainly the lifeblood of what we do, but to be continuously innovative, you have to embrace discomfort. There's nothing about innovation that will be comfortable. It will seem disruptive, it will seem risky, it will seem unpopular, it will seem maybe unnecessary, and yet it will be essential to both your survival as a professional and to the survival of the industry. I go back to the CAR T story, or we were just talking about heart transplants, the other day, and the bravery that it took to do that, and the challenges to do that. Those are massive incremental changes in the trajectory of human history, and yet it takes enormous courage to go there. I'm not saying be irresponsible. Of course, you have to be highly self-critical, highly responsible, highly oriented toward benefit over harm, but you also have to be relentless and also not ever believe that it's over. You know, if I look back at the things that I missed over my career, you know, I thought, oh, that problem was solved. I don't need to do that. Actually, the problem wasn't solved. There's still more opportunity there. There's still more to be learned. You know, it's a bit like, you know, you get a new telescope, you know, look out there, there's still more stars to see. Oh my goodness, you know. That's true of science as well. There will always be more to do. So don't get complacent, and don't think that your idea isn't good enough to really make a change, because it is. You'll understand a process, you'll see a way of doing something better. It'll feel uncomfortable, you'll feel uncertain, you may feel unpopular. That's okay. Just, you know, find those who believe, work with them, integrate team, and you will be transformational in the way you work things.
Thank you. So it's all about continuous improvement, continuous relevance, continuous adaptation to really stay ahead of the game at both the individual and the organizational levels. Thank you. We're going to mix it up a bit so we don't have to go to Rosa first. And that since we're talking about innovation and we know that everybody talks about artificial intelligence, so let's talk about that for a moment. Maybe Michelle, you can share with us how is artificial intelligence impacting your leadership and your organization's work?
Yeah, and it is, again, it's kind of hot and new, but it's not that new, right? So, you know, but it is the point where it is now infusing itself, where you're seeing the changes, the benefits, the disruption that it's actually causing. And I think a good way, and I love the way that you mentioned, you need to kind of be brave and you got to disrupt, because it is scary. You know, we are introducing AI into everything that we're doing from drug discovery. You know, we just have acquired a NVIDIA SuperStack. If you don't know, look it up, it's fun. There's a lot of fun stuff. Put in Iceland for environmental reasons and as well as a few others. But being able to look at that, like learning, teaching it, like putting in all the data that it needs to do the learning models, to be able to predict, again, we're looking at mammograms and imaging versus, and how can you use it to really got to be use large population genetics to start really diving into what targets are really going to be that next, you know, innovative medicine. All the way up to things like regulatory and one-click submissions and being able to automate how you write. We've been really lucky to be able to partner with OpenAI. So we have an enterprise license for ChatGPT, which is obviously, there's a lot of thinking about privacy and ethics. There's risks associated with this. So, you know, what can you transcribe? What can you actually put into that learning model? So, you know, we're having to be disruptive, yet have make sure that we're doing it in an ethical and compliant way. But it is changing the way that we operate. I use ChatGPT every day, and it was down for 2 days, and I felt my productivity go down. So, you know, I like to tell people that I don't think AI is going to replace chemists. But do I think a chemist that knows how to use AI is going to outplay a chemist who does not? Absolutely. I think the way that we think about what skills that we need to procure, right? Or think about prompting, what are the right questions? And I think that's just a strategic element. Being able to ask the right questions is so important. And so strategic, right? But how to prompt, how to ask the right questions, how to get the information you need. These are skill sets that I don't know that not everybody knows or has, but again, I would say don't fear it, learn it. Use it responsibly, but it is actually changing and adding kind of productivity to everything that we're doing. The last thing I'll say is that I think technology in general, AI it's like automation. You think that you can just like sprinkle fairy dust and things are automated, or you know, you can use AI to do X, Y, and Z, but it does take a lot of foundational infrastructure and, you know, data cleansing and learning models and things like that. There's actually a lot of work, and it's the non-fun work, it's the non-sexy work has to go into truly automating or using AI to truly drive decision making. So there's investment in that, there's upskilling and training, but it's worth it.
Thank you, Michelle. Dave?
Yeah. I absolutely agree. I think that the risk, I mean, right now, there's a skill set that exists where AI can assist. I think the risk that we face as humans is reliance on AI and abdication of our own capabilities. So to the MedChem story is a good one. You know, a med chemist who's been doing med chemistry for 30 years is going to have seen way more structures and know a lot more about regulatory problems. We want to take that knowledge and embed that in models so that the junior med chemist has that ability. But then they need to push it a little further. They can't just sort of say, oh, these structures came out of the AI model, that's what we should do. Because there has to be some co-intelligence, and I would recommend that book that came out recently. I don't remember the author's name offhand. It's a bestseller now, but this idea about co-intelligence, that it helps, but it doesn't replace human intelligence. And that's true of design processing, CAD/CAM for industrial design. Even in my own medical practice, you know, I've used ChatGPT to help me think about talks around AI, and it does give me additional information, but I still have to put my brain on top of it to use it. And I think to that extent, not walking away from it, but again, leaning in, learning what it can do. I'm not saying you have to learn how to program in Python. I'm not saying you have to learn how to deal with all these adversarial models and everything else, but you need to be able to communicate with people who do, and to broaden the skills so you can be more effective in whatever you're choosing to do. And that's whether you're using EMR, EHR data to define patient populations, or you're using it to design molecules. And I think that I do think it's your friend at the moment. I think it can be a great help, but it's like any other tool, you need to learn how to use it. And the only way you'll learn how to use it is to use it. So.
No, and I agree, and I don't think I have a lot more intelligence things to add. So from the point of CERM's perspective, we are a government agency, so we are exploring right now using AI to help us figure out how to make predictions and prioritize where we are going to go. But AI is inherent to the research that we fund. So we fund discovery, that's computational biology, that's using AI to discover new targets, etc., and new clinical trial designs, etc. I think it's a philosophical, to me it's philosophical as well, and you both put it really well. I think becoming very reliant on AI can be a danger to society, and also like I figure, like I'm trying to think like how am I going to teach my daughter not to go, like I use ChatGPT all the time, right? It helps me a lot, but I know how to ask the questions and I know how to force myself to think as well. But my daughter, who is 13 years old and comes from a different, is embedded in a very different cultural environment, how am I going to teach her to make that effort, right? To ask herself first and think about the questions, and sometimes try to do it before she asks ChatGPT to see if she can find the same answer. And those are difficult, but yes, I think we need to learn, and we need to learn also how to best educate the next generations that are going to see this as a done deal, and they need to understand how to best use it.
Thank you, very helpful. The next question is going to be really important for everyone in the room here, for current professionals, faculty, staff, or future professionals and our students. How do you suggest for our audience to create a professional network and be integrators and solution-minded professionals in their careers? David, can you start?
What is it, Nike, just do it? I think that not everybody is comfortable with networking, but probably the more you do it, the more comfortable you'll get. Working on teams is a great way. Taking on, grand challenges is a great way to meet people. I would say my professional network has been absolutely critical to my success, both in terms of inspiring me to do new things, having the courage to delve into new areas. I would be deliberate about broadening it. I think the concept, we're thinking at UCSF about our academic departments. And in many ways, those academic departments were defined by a set of scientific skills that are now, I don't want to say irrelevant, but very different, And the idea of a multidisciplinary team is foundational to grant applications to anything that you're doing. And what we're seeing is a sort of dissolving of traditional academic departments. Immunology as it existed is sort of not the same anymore. And so I would just say, again, seek out a broad network of people courses that will expose you to those people. I love this idea of the multidisciplinary science and business. It's a great opportunity to bring the skill sets together, and as people advance through their careers, stay in touch with them. Again, LinkedIn is a great way to do that, because the connection of the connection may be the critical one that you need to move on to the next thing. So I would say be intentional, be deliberately focused outside of your comfort zone, and take on big problems and work together in teams, and you'll learn a ton, and it will continue to grow your network.
Thank you, Dan. Rosa?
So I was thinking as they was talking, I think I was trying to think, when did I first reach to some kind of network specifically? And that was when I was laid off. There was, there are massive layoffs sometimes that happen. And I found myself with, I had to deal with the visa situation, but also I didn't know what I was going to do. And I also thought, it was the time when I was doing more the discovery type of research in the lab, and I wanted to switch, but I didn't know how to. And someone said, have you ever heard of Association of Women in Science? And I hadn't, right? And I joined that, and I actually, for some reason, I was a little bit skeptic about going to an association of just women, right? Just white. Well, actually, it was very helpful, and we should all get together more often, right? Because first of all, they were very supportive. There were people from all the different angles of science. We were all scientists in a way or another, but some were like peer researchers, some were academic, some were leadership that actually wanted to give back to women or to peers, right? And that taught me. It taught me a lesson, not to be so skeptic or cynical that I am sometimes. And the second was that it was a very rich and diverse group that was going to give me opportunities. And out of that, and this was 15 years ago or more, I think, probably more, I still have those connections, and those connections have led to other connections and opportunities. So just reach one, make one effort, talk to peers, talk to other people. And to me it was forced because I lost my job, but you don't wait for that, right? Just figure it out. Yeah.
Michelle?
All really good points. I would just, I guess, add to be intentional. There's been, my Achilles heel is sometimes I put my head down and I'm all about promoting my staff and doing what I'm doing, and then you lift your head up and you realize, wow, I haven't really taken care of myself, my career. So there's just a little bit of be intentional And I almost felt that was kind of selfish, you know, just, I don't want to market myself. It's not about marketing, actually. It's about bringing diverse thinking into your organization or into your personal being. It was recommended to me at one point to create your own personal board of directors, and I took that to heart. I thought that was just fascinating, and it's like, do I have somebody ex-US? Do I have somebody at this level? Do I have somebody here? And being able to kind of thoughtfully put that together in a way actually really helped me, you know, kind of gamify it, or, you know, make it something that it was real. But the other thing I need to do on a regular basis is I call it a calendar diagnostic, to figure out, like, have I taken a little bit of time to put to X? Because it is incredibly important to bring diverse thinking into yourself, to have people that will feed you the truth, right? Truth seekers, but also I call it a spider web. So even at Amgen, I call it the spider web, right? And I've got a spider web that goes far, and I just have to flick it. And I know I can get massive change done. And that is by building a really strong network of diverse colleagues across the organization that through trust and time and kind of common inspiration to really innovate and change, you know, we come together in this united front. There's nothing that we can't do. So I would just say that even as communities, you know, these are the things that we need to think about, is how do we build our own spider webs, and how do we do that together to unite and create change, you know, in the positive way for good. So I'm a huge fan of it, but it's not always been easy for me.
Thank you. Well, we have many, many more questions, but I'd like to have only a few more minutes left. So I'd like to maybe invite any questions from the audience, and we have Rebecca, her hand is up.
So, hi, my name is Rebecca Herrera. I'm a second-year master's student in the pre-health track. So over the weekend, I went to a Latino Medical Student Association, and they said this really awesome quote. It said, if you're not sitting at the table where decisions are being made, you're off the menu. And it did resonate with me. So my question is, how can early career professionals and graduate students, how can we position ourselves to be at that table?
It might be a McKinsey consulting phrase. I've heard it in many, many different contexts. And while cynical, it may actually be a little bit true. I think raise your hand is that, don't be afraid to volunteer, and don't be afraid to drive the change that you want to see. I think that's probably the best advice I could give you. Going back to what I said earlier, you can have a feeling of you have an idea and you think, oh, that idea doesn't matter, it can't be good, I had it, so it can't be. The more you say, hey, wait a minute, no, this is an important idea, and you start to recruit people around it, you're gonna find yourself being able to lead that change to make it happen. So I would say just don't be afraid to raise your hand, to get involved in things, and to drive changes that you need to see, and trust that you'll assemble a coalition of the willing, and pretty soon, you'll be driving that agenda.
Sometimes when we are so passionate and we are on the menu, we are thinking about so much about what it's in our mind, what we want to achieve, that we are forgetting what might be the agenda of the people that are around the table. So also understanding what the agenda of the people on the table is, and trying to figure out, that requires psychology, that requires a lot of, LinkedIn searches, but figure out which ones have more affinity perhaps to what you are thinking about, and then being very proactive and very specific about reaching out to those people. Maybe, figuring out where their path to coffee is or something, right? Or reaching out via LinkedIn or finding their email. Just don't be afraid to be annoying. You are not going to be annoying. If they don't want to talk to you, they won't talk to you, right? But figure out what you can offer to them as well. How do you infiltrate your agenda into theirs?
And I just wanted to add one more thing. And we talked about network and mentors. I cannot understate the importance of a champion. If there's a table that you want to be at, find a champion at that table, get to know them. Have them mentor you, have them ask them, what do you need from me? Or if you're you get yourself to the table, which he described beautifully, have that champion give you feedback, right? That has been really instrumental in me moving up and getting to that table, but also you are going to be uncomfortable. Imposter syndrome is real. You're going to look at that table and be like, I don't deserve to be at that table, and just know that you do. So just keep your confidence up. Maybe you're faking it, you're making it, whatever that looks like for you. You do deserve there. You bring a unique, diverse perspective as well. You may not have that degree from Yale. You may not have X, Y, and Z. Whatever it is that's holding you back, I would just say, absorb it, move forward, and again, use your resources, your champions, but stay confident, even when that little imposter syndrome may tell you otherwise.
So if we were to give one word answer to that question, it would still be networking. But you have to be deliberate about who you network with to bring yourself to the table. We're going to take one other question, and we're out of time, but Dr. Bailey.
Hi, thank you. I'm Barbara Bayless. I'm an assistant professor in genetics here. So also I work with Foundation for Angelman Syndrome Therapeutics, and one of the things we regularly discuss in there is how do you take the basic science, which happens in all the universities, and get it over that sort of valley of death so that it moves into being in the actual clinic, into IND. What do you think we still need to solve so that we actually do shepherd more discoveries to patients?
Personal passion for me in a big way. Right now we have too many handoffs, and I would say over the last few years, the valley of death has become the chasm of death, because actually we have academics here and we have ventures saying, yeah, I'd love to fund it. Once you have your phase 2 proof of concept data, we'll fund it, we'll flip the thing over to phase 3 and get it out. So we've got a lot of short-termism that is affecting our financing environment. I think we've got to move the financing a little bit earlier into the academic centers or settings and we need to build drug discovery expertise within the walls of academia, so that we're moving beyond target discovery to and beyond tool compounds to actual drug-like substances. Now the good news is I think that's becoming more and more available through CROs and other things, and the tools are more democratizable such that we can do it. But I think, the idea that publishing a paper in JCI is enough probably isn't enough anymore. All due respect to all my science colleagues, I think if we're really passionate about changing the course of human health, we have to take it another step further and not just sort of leave it on a journal shelf and wait for someone else to figure it out.
And have collaborations between academics and industry. We are implementing now the strategic allocation framework, and there are new concepts coming to the board, the CERN board in March. And one is going to be for preclinical development programs, which is, development candidate up until IND filing. And that there is funding from CERN for that, by the way. But one of the keys is going to be collaborative between industry and academia. And one thing we need to figure out for rare and ultra-rare diseases is, you might get up to phase 2 pivotal trial, but how are you going to make it accessible? Because the partnering, that's where we are failing, right? So we need to figure out for nonprofits, patient advocacy, and big organizations that are, and perhaps even pharma, figure out what is the instrument that's going to allow us with some seed funding from certain organizations like CERN, how are we going to make this accessible to patients and maybe without benefit, right? So that's the key there.
Yeah, well said. I guess I'll just add a little bit. What it is an ecosystem issue, and that's what you're hearing, right? We need to come together as almost an ecosystem and how to reduce white space, how to reduce handoffs. But it also comes to a point, and I think this is a hard thing, or where does innovation meet business case, right? And just trying to, not stifle innovation. And I've had research, don't stifle innovation by making me do a business case, but trying to understand, who's your patient, And what's the value driver? How do you start thinking about patient early? And I think sometimes we don't. We think about the cool innovation we're doing, which we should. Serendipity speaks. We love that percentage that's just like throw stuff at the wall and, enjoy the mistakes. But at some point to get investment, how do we actually write that business case in a way that's super scientific, but also drives that value so it can be prioritized and pulled forward? And that's not always, it's easier said than done, I think, especially at that early stage.
Thank you. There's a lot more that we could learn from our esteemed panel, but we're out of time. So please feel free to network with our panel, maybe next 10 minutes or so. But for now, please join me in thanking them.